Hey, Foot Clan, just a reminder, we're halfway through the season. If you haven't gotten into the DFS Pass, you can get it at a discounted price now through the end of the year. Now that we're in the second half of the year, you can go grab it at dfspass.com. Get insight into FanDuel, Draft, DraftKings, everything you need to step up your DFS game. That is dfspass.com.
Welcome to the Fantasy Footballers Podcast, coming to you from the Play Draft Studios with your hosts, Andy Holloway, Jason Moore, and Mike Wright.
Welcome in to the greatest show you're ever going to hear.
Wow.
Today.
Oh, all right. That was a clarification there at the end.
It doesn't matter. I'm still nervous and sweaty now.
You've got performance anxiety.
I gotta bring it.
Yeah, it's going to be a jaw-droppingly good show. I mean, just
come on, man.
He's so sweaty now.
The best show.
Pump the brakes over there
in the world. Well, we got Pump the Brakes on the show today.
Yeah, I'm gonna pump the brakes on your jubilation.
My hype.
Yes.
Now, this is a 6-star show today.
No.
Oh man.
I got Judge Giamatti in the house, Andy, Mike, and Jason, the Fantasy Footballers, back again. Welcome in. We are always here talking fantasy football, preparing your team for fantasy football glory, and it's a good one. We got Pump the Brakes on the show, Keep Trade Cut. Very special episode today, our playoff primer. We're going to take a dive into those playoff schedules, give you a lay of the land in terms of quarterbacks and quarterback streaming options and how important you should value playoff schedules. And so I'm very excited. I'll tell you this, the Pump the Brakes is going to be a little controversial today. There's some controversy, so you want to stay right here on the greatest show you're ever going to hear today. The website is thefantasyfootballers.com. On Twitter, you can find us at the FF Ballers. Haven't given our personal handles in a while. Mike, you can find him at FF Hitman.
That's right.
Jason is at JasonFFL.
Incorrect. I just wanted to be different than Mike. That is actually the correct handle.
Yeah, that's verified right there. And I'm at Andy Holloway. Our fantasy football community is jointhefoot.com, so definitely check that out. Now, we received a very interesting email this morning.
We certainly did.
Put a smile on my face. This guy had a good day, I think. His name's Anthony T. He wrote in, he said this. Huge fan. Long story short, I got pulled over.
Oh, no.
After dropping my kid off at school. The cop that pulled him over sees that my radio is playing your podcast. Cop starts asking me random fantasy football questions. We talk, we laugh. He leaves. He comes back and tells me I'm free to go. Says he cannot ticket a member of the Foot Clan and salutes me. I salute back and drive away. # Foot Clan strong.
Well, number one.
Now, this isn't even in the Join the Foot perks list.
Number one. We do not condone reckless driving or speeding.
No, we do not.
But
that's pretty cool.
Anthony, congratulations. And
Officer Awesome?
Yeah.
Officer Awesome, we thank you for being part of the Foot.
And supporting the show.
Oh, that's incredible right there. I will add it to our perks list. Possibly could get you out of a speeding ticket.
5 asterisks.
Yeah, right. But we do not condone.
But that is awesome.
Driving above
the Foot Clan, you're out there, you're everywhere, and we're happy to be a part of your day.
All right, it is Wednesday, which means
O'Reilly.
Auto parts.
Ow!
Yes, it is Pump the Brakes.
That was sensual.
Yeah, it's a little.
Get away from those brakes.
Yeah.
All right, this is Pump the Brakes with O'Reilly Auto Parts. Every Wednesday, we pump the brakes on some of the big performers of the week before, telling you not to overreact. Mine is Corey Clement, running back for the Philadelphia Eagles. It was comedic to me because if you read the blurb on ESPN about Corey Clement this week, it was all about how it's impossible for him to have relevance because of Jay Ajayi's arrival, LeGarrette Blount, the backfield situation. And then he has the best week of his career, a couple of touchdowns, and he's sitting out there on your waiver wire Waiver wires go through today. I'm sure he'll be picked up in a lot of leagues. I'm pumping the brakes on him. It was an outlier game. It was a strange game where they had blown out the opponent, Denver, and he got on the field more. Jay wasn't integrated into the offense. So I think this is the greatest game you're ever going to see from Corey Clement on the Philadelphia Eagles. Therefore, I am pumping the brakes and would not start him. Now it's the bye, so I would definitely not start him.
Nice. I will say, for Clement, do you guys think it's possible that he is passing Wendell Smallwood on the depth chart?
He already passed.
Sure. Yeah, I do believe that.
Like, is there a world now moving forward where it's Jay Ajayi and Corey Clement?
Yes. I do agree with that. The weird thing about it is that you would expect Corey Clement, because the fact that there was LeGarrette Blount and Jay Ajayi both involved last game, you'd expect Corey Clement's damage came through the air. He was the pass-catching back. But he did have a touchdown through the air, but that was his only reception. It was double-digit carries. So I don't see how that's going to happen once Jay Ajayi. I agree with this pump.
Right.
But he might be worth a stash to see how the backfield plays out over the next few weeks. It's a good offensive line there.
Certainly. I'm going to pump the brakes for this upcoming matchup. DeMarco Murray and Derrick Henry.
Ooh, people aren't going to like that.
No, they are not. And listen, as always, a pump the brakes does not mean I'm going to bench this player for anyone I can find out for the waiver wire. It simply means that I am adjusting my expectations from both of these players for the weekend. Perhaps I adjust my flex play, and I go for a little bit more upside. The problem is the Bengals, they are a bottom 10 matchup for fantasy running backs. And on top of that, you have DeMarco Murray, who's just been hurt all year, and yet they keep putting him out there. And what Derrick Henry needs to really get going is a full workload. Derrick Henry's skill set, as we have seen throughout the year, does not manifest itself strongly for just put him in every once in a while
for part-time
and
work.
See what he can do. No, he's Adrian Peterson. He needs to grind down a defense where you just accept that he's going to get 1-2 yard carries for a while before the defense wears down, and then he starts gashing and getting these 10-plus yard runs. So I don't want to play either of these guys. I mean, there's the Henry truthers out there like, I'm going to play him. This is the weekend. Certainly not. DeMarco Murray, I will play if I have to, but once again, I'm adjusting my expectations.
Yeah, that's fair because of the matchup.
I benched him in our league of record.
Yeah.
For Joe Mixon this week. I liked Murray in the second half, but the knee injury.
Same game.
The knee injury, I'm concerned.
Is that like revenge game? But it's just
they're
just
they're
in
on
the
the
same
same
playing at the same time.
Sunday. All right. Well, speaking of, you mentioned several minutes ago, Adrian Peterson.
Yep.
I'm pumping those.
It was like 30 seconds ago, but that's all right.
I'm pumping those brakes, Andy.
You remember when I said that you're pumping the brakes on Adrian Peterson?
You're darn right I am.
Now, you remember a minute ago when I said that this was going to be a controversial pump the brakes?
I think I'm about to find out why. Ooh.
The Fantasy Court
Ooh, I'm in on this.
with Judge Giamatti.
The plaintiff, Andy Holloway, is accusing the defendant, Jason Moore, of reckless endangerment of fantasy football rosters by pumping the brakes on Adrian Peterson.
Ooh.
Jason,
All right. Let's go to court.
let's go to court, my friend. You're pumping the brakes on Adrian Peterson. Another nickname that he has is the only running back with over 100 yards in Week 9.
That's
Would you
a
like
really convoluted nickname.
Yeah, it's a weird one. Would you like me to begin, or would you like to start?
Why don't you take the reins?
Yeah, I
my man.
mean, I feel like you get the last word. Judge Giamatti, did you put the robe on back there?
Always.
Okay, yeah,
Doesn't
that's
take it
always
off.
that's always all he
Sleeps
has
in the
on.
robe, showers in the robe.
Last week, Adrian Peterson, 37 carries for 159 yards, an RB1 in 2 of his 3 weeks in Arizona, and more importantly, the one down game he had only received 11 carries. They were boat raced in London against Los Angeles, and that was with Carson Palmer, a quarterback that Bruce Arians could put his trust in and play that pass-first type of situation, a comeback situation. The other 2 weeks, he's played in Arizona, 26 carries, 37 carries, forced his way back out on the field when they tried to bench him. I think it's reckless.
Rest.
Yes, when they tried to rest him. Yeah, that's on the bench. And I thought it was reckless of you to put him in this category. Yes, it's Seattle, but the game is at home in Arizona. I think he's going to receive 25-plus carries, and I don't think they're getting boat raced at home. Their defense is okay, and I think you're going to hurt people, Jason. I think you're going to hurt them. You're going to hurt them deep.
Ooh. Well, let me say this. As a man who will be going to this game as an Arizona Cardinal fan, I hope that you are correct. Unfortunately, you aren't. And Adrian Peterson needs a serious pump on those brakes. Now,
some pumpage.
Just like Mike said, this does not mean that you have to bench Adrian Peterson. He is the volume back. But he needs to have his expectations greatly changed, especially because last week he was the only running back over 100 yards. He had his – I mean, it's unfathomable that at his age and his workload, he had his career high in carries last week. But there are so many reasons to say, whoa, Adrian Peterson is not a top 15 back this week. It's just not happening. It's not possible because he's coming off of 37 carries, okay? He's a little up there in the age range for a running back, and this is a short week. Okay, last time, I mean, you gloss over the Los Angeles Rams game. Well, one of his last 3 games as a Cardinal, and that was after a great game, he had 11 carries. That was it. And he turned those 11 carries against a good rushing defense into only 21 yards. That's really not good. This week, he plays Seattle. Now, Seattle over the last 5 weeks has been a dominant run-stopping defense. They've only given up 284 yards in the last 5 games. That's 56 yards a game, and they've been doing that on a 2.8 yard per carry clip. Then you have the fact that, look, Seattle's favored by 5.5 points. The game script is probably not going to be an uber-positive game script the way that it was against San Francisco and the way that it was in his first week. So now they might need to pass the ball a little bit more. If they're down by a score, down by 2 scores, they're not going to be able – they're just not going to be able to give him 25, 26 carries. And, look, if he got more than 26 carries, which would be great, that would be the most carries that Seattle's had, given up on them on the entire season.
How many touchdowns has Seattle given up the last 2 weeks?
So last week, Rob Kelly saved his day by the 2 touchdowns, both of which were those, goal line, 1 yard touchdown runs. So look, if there's a pass interference on the goal line, he is the running back to have, and they'll give him the shot at getting that touchdown. So those things can happen. That's why I'm saying this is not a guaranteed must bench, but he is not a top 15 running back. And look, just like Rob Kelly, he got 12. The touchdowns. You want to make a top 12 water bet?
Oh, no.
Oh, what? This is easy.
Water bet.
Top 12, Adrian Peterson this week. All right, Judge, it's time for you to weigh in. I think the arguments have been made. What's the verdict?
I'm pumping the brakes on Adrian Peterson.
Yeah, to the judge.
Yes. That's okay. That's okay. If it's just me and Adrian Peterson walking together, that's fine. I like that man on my side. Corey Clement, Adrian Peterson, DeMarco Murray, the Pump the Brakes. This was Pump the Brakes with O'Reilly Auto Parts. Better parts, better prices every single day. Before we jump into the news, I want Mike's 2-second take on where he sides on that argument.
It's just so hard to put faith in a bad matchup. A 32-year-old running back. It's Adrian Peterson. I get it. He's kind of proven that he is a superhuman mutant of sorts. But 37 carries on Sunday is to play football on Thursday. That's
pumping him.
I got to pump the brakes. Sounds like you're pumping.
All right, the pump crew. I got to work with you.
News and notes from around the league.
Mike Evans was denied in his appeal of his 1-game suspension. He's out week 10.
I told him to use that A.J. Green tape.
DeSean Jackson this week with no Mike Evans becomes a wide receiver. This is where you fill in the blank.
2, 3.
Yeah. I mean,
you don't move him up a lot.
No. I don't think he gets force-fed targets, and it's still Ryan Fitzpatrick.
Chris Godwin becomes a sneaky snart.
Interesting, yeah.
Because he's much more the style of, the Mike Evans.
It's far more DFS-related pick for me, though. I don't think I would start Godwin in a season long.
No, he's
we're not moving D-Jax up
he's
at
what
all.
We call a glory play.
Sure.
Well, the point is D-Jax already on the field for his snap count's not going up because he's already up there. His role isn't going to change, but he might get a few more targets. I think someone else there will obviously benefit from the missing targets of Mike Evans, and that would either be Chris Godwin, Adam Humphries, or maybe Cameron Brate.
O.J. Howard. Mike Tomlin confirmed Martavis Bryant will play Week 10 against the Colts. Doesn't matter.
For fantasy, as in starting him, probably not, but he does help the offense.
Darrell Bevell, Seahawks offensive coordinator, said Thomas Rawls is starting Thursday against the Cardinals. Does that matter?
If you are like me and you are,
would you start DeMarco Murray or Thomas Rawls?
I'd start Murray over Rawls because that's
just checking.
Sure, but Rawls is worth a desperation start. Bad matchup though.
Okay, Case Keenum's going to start in Week 10. It's not going to be Bridgewater.
Bradford actually had surgery on his knee and might be headed to the IR. I expect that he will be.
Yeah, he had his knee scoped. A clean-out job by Dr. James Andrews.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
That's never
Chris
good.
Hogan, Paul Richardson, Jimmy Graham didn't practice on Tuesday. I think the one to pay close attention to there is actually Paul Richardson because this is a new issue for him.
What did he hurt?
Jimmy Graham, it's his groin. Paul Richardson, I don't know if he's going to play on Thursday. That might bump Tyler Lockett up because Patrick Peterson's probably going to be mixing it up with Doug Baldwin more often than Tyler Lockett.
Yeah, I actually really like Tyler Lockett as a play this week, which we'll get into later today.
We will?
Well, we're covering the Thursday night game today.
Okay,
right?
Then we will.
There you go.
We're going to do a little bit of you guys want to start with the playoff primer or you want to start with Keep Trade Cut?
Let's start with Keep Trade Cut.
Okay, then I'll push this button.
Keep Trade Cut.
I'm happy to report that there's a large quantity of people that did, in fact, poop themselves when I hit that extra show drop the other day. We had the double Raising Cane's drop right in the middle of the segment. And
that was terrifying.
Yeah, a lot of people had to pull over, clean up a little bit.
Get the baby wipes.
Get the baby wipes out.
Little wet wipe.
Yep. All right, Keep Trade Cut. We're right around that trade deadline, guys. We have leagues where our trade deadline is over. We also have leagues where that big red banner's popping up on your provider saying it's coming. So this is the time to make your moves. This is the time to know whether to trade some of these guys.
We have breaking news.
Is it worthy of the button?
It sure is.
Breaking news.
We just talked about it, but now it's official. Sam Bradford will be placed on the IR.
He has reserved seating on the IR.
Man.
First class ticket to the IR.
I will say this.
That's a bummer.
That's it. Sam Bradford, I know everyone's like, oh, he's been paid so much money. Yeah, that's fantastic. But the guy had a dream of playing football, and he was pretty good. And it's just these knee injuries have derailed it, and it's
Week 1.
It stinks for him.
Was awesome. I mean, what could have been. His knees are not.
Week 1 looks even better now when you think about where the Saints are as a defense and being 6-2,
Super Bowl bound Saints,
and getting completely and utterly. You mean the team we picked to win the Super Bowl before the year?
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, that's
somebody tweeted at me, and in April they went and they got 75-1.
Yeah, well,
on a $20 Super Bowl bet for the Saints.
We're making people money, Mike.
I said, yeah.
Now I guess they do have to still win it.
Yeah, it's a foregone conclusion.
Yeah, it's kind of done deal. Player requests from the Foot Clan for Keep Trade Cut. These came through on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, wherever you follow us. Number 1 request by far is Doug Martin. Keep Trade Cut. Dougie Martin.
He is a shop and hold, as in the trade deadline's coming up.
A shop and hold?
Yes, you shop him around and see if you can get good value for him. If you can, you pull the trigger. But if you can't get good value, you don't just trade him away because
or
there is the chance. Yeah, you definitely
do not
don't
cut
him.
No.
There is still the chance that the ship gets righted and Doug Martin has a great rest of season. And so, when you're trading him, that's what the person taking him on is going to hope for, and that's where you need to get that kind of value out of him. But you should definitely be looking to trade him, because I put the odds of him having a really successful fantasy season from here on out at the under 50%. You know, I don't expect it to happen the way that the outlook has been recently.
I like his matchups if he gets on the field, and you have to hope that what we saw in that 30-10 loss was just a resting of Doug Martin because the game was out of hand. And
I think it was a benching for stink.
Yeah, I think it was both. I mean, it was no need to put him out there. Might as well throw someone else out there. So if this team's playing from behind, maybe they do that again. That's the risk.
I have a dynasty question then for Jason.
Okay.
If you have it at sub 50% for him to bounce back, which I would probably put it around there too, because it wasn't just for fantasy purposes last week. He's been trending down since he had a monster game 1, but it's been trending down since then. Is Doug Martin a Tampa Bay Buccaneer next year?
I would say no.
Okay.
He is very expensive. He's 28 now, so he'll be 29 next year. And if the team continues to stink, I doubt they want that kind of money in the running back position. They've got other assets there, but it's just a guess.
Yeah, of course.
I don't believe any of his money is guaranteed.
He's not guaranteed anymore because of the suspension. So
Seems to have
that's where I was curious.
an on and off relationship with that staff. So if that staff isn't there, that could change things. Alex Collins, keep trade cut on the bye.
Ooh,
this is the time you got to kind of – would you cut him if you don't have a buyer, which I doubt you will? I mean, you got to move on with the bye week and with Danny Woodhead coming back and Buck Allen.
He's a hold for me. If I saw him on the waivers, I would pick him up. Now, because it's a bye, I think we said this yesterday. If you have to, make a pickup, make a start because of bye week issues, then drop him. He is. It's not the end of the world if you need to drop Alex Collins, but I would try to keep him if I could.
I agree.
I'd be a cut for me. I'd be single digits every game but one this entire year. I feel like you're up against it trying to roster him through the bye.
Sure. He's just as – I mean, he's a low-level running back too, which if you feel like you can replace that or you don't need that, I guess I'm okay cutting.
Yeah, he's 5 weeks in a row of double-digit carries.
Yeah.
And he's looked pretty good and was more and more involved, and then this last week was a down week. I think that's why we're tempted to cut him.
Okay, Keenan Allen, Stefan Diggs. Keep trade cut for both of those guys.
I'm going to keep Keenan Allen and Stephon Diggs. If you can trade it, the only problem with Stephon Diggs is health. So if you can move him and get fair value, I would do it. But I'm also okay just rolling the dice, hoping that he heals up and that he gets back on the field for the rest of the year, because when he plays, he's very good.
Yeah, I think I agree. I hold Allen and try to trade Diggs. I still see trade offers coming through where Diggs is getting a lot of value.
He still has name value, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's still got the value from, those first 3 weeks. He was the number 1 wide receiver. Everybody wanted him, that he was injured. So I've seen people give up a lot for him. And if you can, then I would trade Stefan Diggs.
Hey, before we get into a few more Keep Trade Cut, I want to thank today's sponsor, Pristine Auction, the best sports memorabilia site on the entire interwebs.
We just got a David Johnson for our upcoming giveaway, I believe.
You're darn tootin'. We got a David Johnson, and we got a smoking deal on it. I just want to read through a couple deals here that have passed on the previous day for Pristine Auction. People, look, Evan Ingram, he is an emerging superstar for fantasy football. He is a stud, and somebody got a signed Evan Ingram jersey for $48.
Wow.
And now I do not mind driving up the market on Evan Ingram jerseys because I already have one. And you should have one as well because he's going to be great for years to come. A signed Brett Favre photo, $48.
Nice.
A signed Tyreek Hill mini helmet for $80. And look, the signatures are always authentic over on Pristine Auction. They go through all the lengths and steps possible to make sure that these signatures are authentic. They use the best authenticators in the business. Check out Pristine Auction. It's Pristine auction.com. You make a completely free account.
Yeah,
Let them know that the footballers sent you. They have new
Christmas
stuff.
time.
Yeah, Christmas time's coming, and they have new stuff every single day.
Nice.
Yeah, we also want to thank Indochino, great longtime sponsor of the show. They are the place to go, Indochino.com, for made-to-measure, tailored premium suits. You know, most of the time when you're getting a suit, you get one of two options. You either get a garbage suit off a rack that's all clumpy at your shoulders, doesn't fit you, or you get a multiple thousands of dollars tailored, made-to-measure suit. Indochino is kind of changing the way that's done. If you've got a wedding coming up, or if you wear suits for work, or, you know, every man needs a suit. I have one. All three of us have an Indochino suit, and I can genuinely say it's the best thing that's ever fit me. So, look, go to Indochino.com, or you could drop by one of their 9 North American showrooms. You pick from hundreds of fabrics, patterns, choose how you want to customize it, the pockets, everything. It's really easy, and it's actually a lot of fun, and then in about 4 weeks you'll get it. And this week you can get Indochino's best deal ever, $359 for any premium suit at Indochino.com when you enter footballers at checkout. That's over 50% off the regular price for made-to-measure premium suit, and shipping is free. So that's Indochino.com, promo code footballers for any premium suit, just $359 with free shipping.
All right, before we jump into the playoff primer, when you said those bunchy shoulders, I couldn't help but think of Sam Bradford again, by the way. C.J. Anderson, keep trade cut. I've seen pictures of people cutting C.J. Anderson and then kind of likening it to Andy Dufresne getting out of prison in Shawshank Redemption.
Freedom.
That's how I would look at it, but you guys are different than me. Keep trade cut.
Well,
C.J.
Hopefully those people
Anderson.
do not feel the fool with this spectacular matchup against the Patriots at home. I think Anderson can have a fine game this weekend. Jay, where are you on Anderson?
I am without a doubt a hold, as we will talk about here in upcoming playoff schedules. C.J. Anderson has a rather nice one, and he's a quality back. He's been running well. The problem is that he is part of a three-headed monster. Their offense right now stinks. Their quarterback is even worse than that right now because his name is Brock Lesnar. So I get Brock Lesnar. Oh, that's great. Oh, man. You know, honestly, Brock Lesnar would be a better quarterback.
I can see the Photoshops coming in already behind center. Brock Lesnar said it.
Part of Brock Lesnar's contract is he doesn't play with a jersey.
He
for sure.
Shirtless. He tats on the numbers.
He tats on the number. Here's the problem.
I can't change numbers, guys.
Here's the real
It's
problem.
tattooed.
In the off season, there was excitement around C.J. Anderson, in part because we projected a vast improvement to the offensive line play in Denver with the pickups that they had. We've seen this in Los Angeles, the amazing difference that Andrew Whitworth has made to the Rams. We've seen this on some of these improved offensive lines. It has not come to fruition in Denver. Their offensive line has struggled, and now teams just have to stop 3 running backs, and you put the ball into Osweiler's hands. I know that it's almost a cliche, and I hope that doesn't make you guys stay in the Anderson camp forever, but look, I know the matchup looks good, but you're just not – do you really have confidence rolling him out there as a running back 2 this week after a 2-point fantasy performance?
That was against the Eagles, and the Eagles are one of the best rushing
What
defense.
about the Giants? He had a 2-point fantasy performance against the Giants.
Yeah,
9 for 17.
Sure, and that's a fair point. The entire Denver Broncos team soiled themselves against the Giants, but just 2 weeks ago against the Kansas City Chiefs, he was 15 for 78 on the ground, had a 7-yard reception. That's a perfectly acceptable.
Was that before or after Booker came back?
That was
after.
That was after. That was 2 weeks ago. That just happened. So I'm still holding on C.J. Anderson.
I respect that, guys. I do. I just wanted to bring up the offensive line specifically because we're not getting that. It's not like you said he's running well, but he's not getting a lot of help either. So I would debate the running well part with the numbers, but I understand holding him. I mean, there are a bunch of guys that we've mentioned that were like, okay, well, would you rather hold him or Alex Collins?
I would much rather hold C.J. Anderson than Alex Collins.
Okay. Would you rather – all right. We'll move on. Larry Fitzgerald, keep trade cut. That's an interesting one.
I would trade if I could. I would trade. I talked about this last week in the matchup that the matchup against San Francisco was so good that you knew that Fitz would be fine. And so if people want to take that small sample size of, okay, well, here's Larry Fitz with Drew Stanton. Maybe he'll be okay. And you can trade him away on the name value off of a mediocre game. I would absolutely do it. I would not cut Larry.
No.
But I would prefer to trade him if
Completely
possible.
agree with everything you're saying. I mean, he had 3 touchdowns in his first 6 games. So basically every other game he's getting a touchdown. How many touchdowns is Drew Stanton throwing to Larry Fitzgerald the rest of the season? 2?
Yeah, I was going to say 2.
So I would try to trade him and get something for him.
Jason, what would you do with Lamar Miller right now?
Lamar Miller is one of 2 things. So for me, I would say most often he's going to be a keep. I don't think you're going to get the value that, a couple weeks ago, I have Lamar Miller a lot of different places. I was actually trying to sell him before Deshaun Watson went down, and I was really surprised at what his value was amongst others. They didn't see him as high as I think they should have. He was about to be a top 10 running back week in, week out. He was already a top 10 running back during the time that Watson had been playing, but people didn't value him then. And so now without Watson, I don't think you're going to be able to trade him for good enough value. And what you've got in Lamar Miller is basically last year's Lamar Miller, which everyone was disappointed with because they had to draft him in the first round, but he was all right. He's an RB2.
Want to hear an interesting fact about Lamar Miller?
Heck yeah, I do.
4.51 yards per carry with Tom Savage this year.
He's amazing.
Yeah.
But the touchdowns are the issue.
10 for 57 last
Savage.
week. So you're playing from behind. Those 10 carries worry me, but still double-digit numbers. Probably a hold if people are freaking out.
I would keep him.
He does play Jacksonville, Pittsburgh in the first 2 weeks of the playoffs, which concerns me. But if you have him for the fantasy championship, he's got Indianapolis again. Let's transition into the playoff primer time. So let's talk a little bit about our philosophy on playoff matchups in general. You've had a situation where in years past, a playoff schedule has been extremely conducive for fantasy production at the quarterback position. Kirk Cousins 2 years ago.
Oh, man, Cousins and Jordan Reed.
They won people championships.
Yeah.
Last year, you also had, all during the season, we're looking at Drew Brees and the fact he gets to play Tampa a couple times.
And Jameis and Doug Martin.
In Atlanta. And these players that have fantasy, look so beautiful, but it doesn't always come to fruition. So how much does that factor into your decision-making right now? We've talked a lot about guys like DeAndre Hopkins, right? Great player, tough playoff schedule. Where do you guys sit philosophically? How much do you let that weigh in on your decision-making right now with trade deadline, start-sit decisions?
I think you need to take it on a player-by-player basis. I don't think there's a universal hard and fast rule. When you've got a star, a guy that is a really good quarterback, so for instance, I think Russell Wilson doesn't have the best schedule coming up. I'm not going to care that much about it. But if you've got a guy like a Kirk Cousins, a guy that is, look, he'll take advantage of the opportunities when they're easy, and he might not be able to step up for the real hard, elite, difficult matchups. Then I with a guy like that, I'm going to take the playoff schedule a little bit more seriously. So it's case by case, but you never want to overreact to the schedule. And I think one of the things that always skews those schedules, we brought it up for last year, is those times when a team plays the same poor defense 2 times within that playoff schedule. So, they'll play them back-to-back or with 2 within 3 weeks.
No, they don't play back-to-back.
Well, okay, 2 within 3 weeks, they'll play.
That's fine.
And here's what I don't remember seeing. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong. But do you remember seeing the same team play each other 2 times within 3 weeks and both games just be a shootout? Like the defenses can't, in 2 weeks, having just played this opponent, kind of
right. They typically adjust
and have a different game plan. So
and divisional matchups sometimes impact performance outside of where we see players and teams ranked for fantasy points given up. You play somebody in your division. We've seen this, for years, like Jacksonville, when they were a bottom-of-the-barrel team and Indianapolis was on top of the mountain. Somehow when they played each other, it didn't matter. The games were close. They were within 7 points a bunch of times, even when Jacksonville was a 3-13 team. I think you see that aspect. Those divisional matchups, they're the Super Bowl for the low-performing team sometimes to get to go into your division mate's house and knock them out of the playoffs in those circumstances. Let's give a little bit of a lay of the land. Let's talk about Russell Wilson for a second because he has a really bad Week 14. He plays Jacksonville. Now, Jacksonville they're not a bad matchup. They're a terrible matchup for all fantasy quarterbacks. Like, nobody puts up fantasy points against Jacksonville, and this one's in Jacksonville in Week 14, the hypothetical first week of your playoffs if you don't have a bye week. Does that mean you're moving Russell Wilson?
I don't know if I'll move Russell Wilson. He's going to be extremely difficult because I think he can carry you to the playoffs. He's incredible for fantasy, and you're going to want to play him. And I think it's a mistake to put your playoff dreams on Russell Wilson in Jacksonville across the country against the best pass defense in the NFL.
Yeah, you might be able to just pick up someone for that week off of waivers that you would prefer to play over Russell Wilson. That being said, I do think that Russell Wilson's scrambling and rushing ability gives him a slightly higher baseline. If you look at who Jacksonville has played against this year, it's been almost all immobile quarterbacks. You know, they've played the Big Ben and Phillip Rivers and McCown, even though he's got scoring, you know, he's got 3 rushing touchdowns. He doesn't have very many yards. The one game where they played Marcus Mariota, you know, who could scramble around, that was in week 2 before he was injured. He was able to scramble. He was all right. Nothing great, but, you know, put up 17 fantasy points. I think Russell Wilson is a little bit safer than pocket passers against that defense because that defense has such a good line. If you can scramble around and wear them out, I think Russell, he's not going to be outside he'll probably be around quarterback 12 that week.
All right, let's look at the best quarterback schedules for weeks 14 through 16. Marcus Mariota plays Arizona, San Francisco, back-to-back 14-15, then the Rams. Others with favorable matchups. Tyrod
Carson
Taylor.
Wentz.
Love Tyrod Taylor. I mean, he plays Indianapolis, Miami, New England. Carson Wentz. The Rams, then the Giants and Oakland in the championship weeks. Derek Carr has a very nice week 14. Jay Cutler, an interesting week 14. If you are desperate, I wouldn't love going in the playoffs with him.
I was going to say, so if you have a Russell Wilson situation, you might be your
Sure.
waiver wire at that point because Mariota will not be on your waiver wire. Tyrod maybe,
Yeah.
but Cutler most certainly will be. I mean, that's the unfortunate situation you're set up with if Russell Wilson is your one quarterback.
Yeah, I think there's a handful of guys, and you just named them, Andy. Marcus Mariota, Tyrod Taylor, Derek Carr. I would throw
So what about Rivers, who has
Carson Wentz for sure. Those are the guys that have, and Rivers as well, they have really good matchups throughout the entirety of the playoffs. You know, Dak Prescott has an awesome week 1 and week 2, but then it's, you know, Seattle for the championship week. So I'm not quite as up on that. But those other guys, I mean, that's a handful of guys that you can acquire, and you can acquire them on the cheap. Marcus Mariota has one of the, over the last 2 years,
been very disappointing.
He has the biggest splits between tough matchups and easy matchups. He is a guy that takes advantage of the easier matchups, and he's got an easy matchup schedule. You can acquire him for very cheap.
Yes.
I mean, plenty of people have been getting him off of waiver wires the last week or two because, you know, he's been disappointing and immobile. If he's healed up by then, I like going after a guy like that.
Seems like he's getting healthy. Do you approach, if you're a streaming quarterback guy, right? You don't have a guy locked in, and if you want to lock in with Russell Wilson, I don't blame you. You know, that's fine. But if you're a streaming quarterback player, is this the time when you start looking at having that tandem on your roster?
Yes.
And with this in mind, looking and saying, "Oh, okay, well maybe, you know, maybe I'm going to pick up somebody."
Yeah, I've got Russell Wilson, so maybe I'll grab Tyrod Taylor.
Yeah, Tyrod Taylor for that
him.
first week, and then, you know, you roll it back over to Russell Wilson. I want to give you some of the worst schedules just for your awareness. I think the real one of relevance, you know, Tom Brady doesn't have a great one with Pittsburgh in Week 15. I don't see how I'd ever bench Tom Brady.
No. It's like Aaron Rodgers last year had the worst schedule imaginable. And
Big Ben, Cam Newton, Andy Dalton, really tough schedules.
I was just remembering, I don't think it was last year, but 2 years ago when Tom Brady literally lost people
and Andrew Luck,
playoffs.
same year. That was the Kirk Cousins year.
Yes.
Brady and Luck bombed
2 years ago
in the fantasy playoffs for a lot of owners that just locked themselves in. And That's a tough decision to make.
Yes, it is.
But Russell Wilson against Jacksonville or
exactly.
Tyrod Taylor against Indianapolis at home.
That one
Week 14. I want Tyrod Taylor now. I want to pick him up now off a waiver.
Yes, exactly. That's the situation. Like, I wouldn't go Cutler, even though he's playing New England, over Russell Wilson. But I would go Tyrod Taylor at home against Indy over Russell Wilson for sure.
It's going to be hilarious when Blake Bortles wins people fantasy championships this year.
Houston, San Francisco. The last 2 weeks of the year.
It's going to be really funny.
See, that's the benefit of streaming a quarterback, right? Like you get to not only I would be wearing that Blake Bortles jersey to the next draft and every draft thereafter if he won me a fantasy title, but you got to be flexible with that. And I'd be pretty hands-off on people playing Jacksonville right now. I'd be really scared about people playing Pittsburgh.
Yes.
And these are things to keep in mind across your positions too. So any other players that you want to note there? I mean, Big Ben, like we said, very tough beginning to the playoff schedule. Cam Newton, I don't want him against Minnesota in Week 14. But I think it's just building a tandem on your roster.
Yeah, that's what it's about. Find those matchups you like and you're confident in and have a few quarterbacks.
Yeah, I like Alex Smith. If you just need to lock him in, Carson Wentz, lock him in. Dak Prescott, lock him in. Those are kind of the always must-start type of players. Anything else you guys want to touch on?
Not for quarterback.
All right. Do you guys want to go ahead and preview the Thursday night matchup?
Sure.
Or do you? Oh, I'm sorry. We only talk quarterbacks.
I was very confused.
And we can come back to this, talk about running
Let's
backs
just jump everywhere
a little bit later.
Nope.
All right, running backs it is. So we've got a lot of running backs.
Didn't see the tabs, Mike. Didn't see the tabs.
I gotcha.
Was wondering where they were.
So, Andy, why don't you tell us some of the running backs with good opening schedules?
Well, one of the reasons I had a lot of faith in DeMarco Murray for the second half of the year is because he faces a very favorable playoff schedule. If he can get healthy by Week 15, you've got San Francisco and then the Rams. They're giving up the most and the second most. So you've got the best two possible running back matchups. Solid matchups for Devonta Freeman, LaShawn McCoy, Jay Ajayi, if he starts to get carries, looks great. Adrian Peterson. 3 very nice matchups. I just think they're going to hand him the ball all year long.
I agree. My pump the brakes was a this week thing. I'm not saying you need to ship Adrian Peterson out. I do think that David Johnson's not coming back, and the playoff schedule will be nice for Adrian Peterson. Tennessee, Washington, the New York Giants. He could help win people championships.
Kareem Hunt has a nice Week 14. You're starting him. Ingram and Kamara, who Jason said were the second and third best running backs in fantasy football right now.
Since AP's been gone.
Yeah, I don't know if you can acquire either of them at this point.
Are you afraid of players like Todd Gurley, who has Philadelphia, Seattle, Tennessee, Carlos Hyde, Houston, Tennessee, Jacksonville, Joe Mixon, not a nice-looking playoff schedule, Leonard Fournette, Seattle, Houston, but then he gets that championship week, San Francisco.
Yeah, the person that I'm the most fearful of, and I don't know that you can do much about it, but Todd Gurley, look, I realize he's the number 1 running back right now, but the Philadelphia Eagles have shut down other running backs, and they've done it against great running backs. And then to go from there to Seattle and play in Seattle, those are your opening 2 weeks of the playoffs. And you could end up with real duds there from the guy that got you to the playoffs. And
I don't think I would bench him, though. I don't see any situation where I would.
But if you can turn him into Kareem Hunt, or if you could turn him into LaShawn McCoy, if you're already playoff bound and you're looking good, LaShawn McCoy plays Indianapolis, Miami, New England. Yes.
Yeah.
Pretty good. I mean, awesome.
If you could.
To that point, Seattle. When he played Seattle this year, that's his only dud game for Gurley on the year.
Yeah.
14 for 43, no touchdowns. He's in Seattle. That was at home. He's in Seattle Week 15 after that Philadelphia matchup.
Would you consider flipping Gurley for Shady Plus?
Yes.
Because you could go to the Shady McCoy owner right now and just 1-for-1 that.
Yeah, and that's get more.
Yeah, so maybe you can get a nice wide receiver or something in there.
You can get Kareem Hunt Plus.
Maybe. Yeah, you probably could.
I think you can because you're coming off of 2 down weeks for Kareem Hunt. And if you can flip him for a guy that is still you're not losing a stud running back. You know, we're not saying go and trade him for C.J. Anderson because he's got a good playoff schedule. We're saying go after Kareem Hunt or Shady, maybe the Mark Ingram or Kamara. But all of those situations, you're going to get more back than just that player. And I think that in the playoffs, I mean, I can tell you right now, Shady and Hunt, they'll be ahead of Gurley on my rankings for week 14 and 15 for sure.
Yeah.
I think where Todd Gurley owners are scratching their heads is my situation. I'm in a dynasty league.
There's nothing you can do about it.
But I'm going to play for the title this year. The trade deadline's coming up, and I'm staring down the fact I cannot trade Todd Gurley in a dynasty league, but I have to play him against Philly and Seattle.
That would be a Kareem Hunt only.
You're out there. You're the angry man who's just shouting at the storm. There's nothing you can do about it. The storm's coming.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I think you guys are right. I think that this is probably one of the things we're going to look back on, and if people made a move, it might win you a title.
Yep.
And you can get it done with the number one running back right now. Tough running back matchups. If I can get back to that page there. Tough running back matchups.
Marshawn Lynch doesn't have the best matchup.
No, he doesn't.
Joe Mixon, you mentioned his name, and Leonard Fournette. Other guys that have Leonard Fournette probably has something somewhat similar to Gurley. I mean, Seattle is one of those 2 weeks. Houston is the other one. That's how his playoffs start. I'm not as fearful of Houston. They're great so far, but I feel like that team is
imploding.
Yeah,
I would. I'd really try to move Carlos Hyde right now for multiple reasons. Towards the end of the year, if a team is not competing, they're going to want to get a look at their younger players, and they like and believe in Matt Breida there. Carlos Hyde might not belong for that team, and then he has a tough schedule. So Hyde, he's in that trade right now category. Joe Mixon, while he has a pretty bad schedule, he might be in the opposite category where it's like, okay, this team's playing for the future. They might feed him the ball like they've been feeding him in the end of the year. He may be okay. Fournette, you're not doing anything with him.
Would you trade Carlos Hyde then for DeMarco Murray, who has a pretty good playoff schedule?
I think that's a great angle as long as you're secured for the playoffs.
I was going to say go talk to the Devonta Freeman owner.
Oh,
sure.
Yeah. Freeman, I love.
Because he's coming off of those, what are we, 4 or 5 straight down weeks?
I think 4 down weeks where, the Freeman owners are scared and you can acquire him on the cheap. He's got a pretty good playoff schedule. New Orleans twice, Tampa Bay in the middle.
All right, let's talk wide receivers. And wide receiver matchups, you can make a lot of ground up on it. If you're an underdog in the playoffs, but you play the matchups right, you have the right players in position. I see this all the time. If you're in the playoffs and you're facing a guy with a couple of stud wide receivers, but they have really tough matchups, and you can flex and move and nimbly put in somebody else that has a great schedule, you can win those matchups. So great schedules for fantasy wide receivers. Kelvin Benjamin. Juicy matchups. We just talked about Tyrod. It makes perfect sense, right?
This is 100% TBD, though. We don't know what Kelvin Benjamin is on that team yet.
He's the number 1 wide receiver.
But something to be aware.
But what does that mean?
Yeah, it means not a lot of targets so far this year. But Indianapolis and New England. Devin Funchess.
It's interesting.
They're on different teams now, but both have good schedules.
You have to like what Crabtree has in Week 14 and Amari Cooper. They're facing 3 defenses in Weeks 14, 15, 16 that give up the most, 8th most, and 13th most fantasy points to wide receivers. The Landry-Parker-Stills combo. We talked about Cutler having a nice matchup. Well, that leans itself to Landry-Parker-Stills.
Yeah, Sterling Shepard.
Love it.
I really like him rest of season. Not a lot of matchups that scare me, but his playoffs, Dallas, Philly is not that great against the pass, and Arizona has been surprisingly terrible against the pass. And then, of course, Atlanta. You're playing New Orleans twice, and so I do give a little bit of caution there.
Sure.
But Julio's got a nice playoff schedule. I really like Sanu lately. He's come on strong.
I've seen several people on Twitter moving Hopkins for Julio Jones.
Nice.
And saying, did I win? I'm like, oh, man.
Yes.
I love that trade.
That's a perfect template.
And on top of that, the schedules. DeAndre Hopkins and the Houston Texans have
Jacksonville and Pittsburgh in the playoffs.
Yeah, your semis and your championship is Jacksonville and Pittsburgh. The two worst matchups for wide
you bring
receivers.
that up. Trade Hopkins. We've been saying that. Please find a trade this week before he comes back to reality. Same with T.Y. Hilton. I mean, T.Y. Hilton, yes, he had this monstrous matchup last week against a defense that's been giving it up through the air. He is not going to be reliable rest of season with Jacoby Brissett.
Brock Lesnar.
With Brock Lesnar can't get him the ball.
Now they traded him from the Broncos to the Colts?
Yep.
Yeah.
Wow.
He had to get the tats filled in with different colors now.
It's a hassle.
So, but T.Y. Hilton, I mean,
hassle.
you're playing against Buffalo, who's been great, Denver, who is awesome, and Baltimore, who's great. T.Y. is not going off against those three defenses with Jacoby Brissett at the helm or Brock Lesnar.
What do you think of Doug? I mean, Doug Baldwin, love him second half of the season. Don't love the playoff schedule. Jacksonville, the Rams, and then Dallas for Baldwin, Richardson, Lockett. You also have tough schedules for Brandon Cooks and Chris Hogan and Amendola and whoever's catching the ball in New England. Tough schedule for the Robbie Anderson truther over there with Denver in the first game of the fantasy playoffs. Those are just, I think Mike laid it out there, that template where if you can swap Hopkins for Julio because you're making the playoffs, you're setting yourself up for playoff success.
Would you trade, because kind of based off of this schedule, and we talked about Seattle is rough, would you move Doug Baldwin for Cooper or Crabtree?
For Crabtree, I think I would. Crabtree's got a really nice schedule, and I see those players.
He's got
about
the same
tier.
exact schedule as Amari Cooper.
Yes,
I'm not sure if you realize this.
Obviously, but
Same team.
But one of them is
Sundays.
reliable, and one of them is in the same tier as Doug Baldwin to me, and that's only Crabtree. Cooper, to rely on 3 weeks in a row in the playoffs. I mean, has Cooper ever had 3 good weeks in a row?
Impossible.
Yeah, he's up and down.
Yeah. You can probably get more than Crabtree for Baldwin, with Crabtree having a couple down weeks.
Sure.
I put a call in. I want Crabtree to give me a good week this week. I need that confidence rebuilt. He hasn't been targeted as much as I'd like.
Got to take out Cook.
Jared Cook.
Oh, yeah.
Jared Cook's
Take him
hogging
out?
up. Look,
Yeah.
I'm going to leave that to you to
Come
determine
on.
what that means.
It's Tanya Harding
I thought you were
situation
gonna
over
say,
here.
I don't know why, but
I meant
this is where
take
my
him out
brain
to
goes.
dinner and you know.
My brain goes take out an advertisement in the paper.
There you go. I left it up to you,
Derek Carr,
and this guy over
please
here is
throw it
like
to Crabtree.
Tanya Harding it. I didn't mean that.
No, you didn't.
No way.
I think we have some
Don't-
clips of you
I got-
saying other terrible things too.
Devontae Parker's going to win people fantasy titles this year.
Oh, that's a hot take.
So I just want to throw that at Brooks. I'm throwing it out there. Devontae Parker, with that schedule, with what he's done when he's healthy, I'm telling you, he's going to win people titles.
It's Wednesday, November 8th. The
Devontae
bold prediction.
Parker. All right, let's move on to tight ends. Best tight end schedules towards the end of the year. A lot of players stream tight ends. So
Zach Ertz, congratulations.
yeah, I mean, Zach Ertz, you're locked and loaded for your fantasy playoffs. Jason Witten has a nice schedule. Hunter Henry, Jesse James, or Vance McDonald, whoever you probably none of them. Probably neither of
I think
those.
Charles Clay is.
Yeah, he's sneaky.
I won a championship last year in the League of Record on the back of Charles Clay because his matchups in the playoffs were great, and he produced in those weeks. I think it's going to happen again. They're resting him up, get him back. He's got Indianapolis, Miami, New England. Those are good matchups for him, and you can grab him because he's on pretty much every waiver wire right now. He's been injured, and he might be a stash if you're playoff bound.
If you picked between him and Greg Olsen as a stash, Greg Olsen has one of the worst schedules in the fantasy playoffs, both coming back from injury. Does that lean you towards Clay? Or do you just go Olsen because of the Newton connection?
Yeah, it's not me. It would be Greg Olsen still because he's not – his target share is not the usual tight end. Now, Charles Clay lately has not been either, but still I'm okay playing Greg Olsen against these rough matches.
Yeah, and if you look, the Kelvin Benjamin switch actually helped Greg Olsen and could hurt Charles Clay going from one team to the other. So I would
Nice.
I would side with Greg Olsen as well on that. Despite the playoff, that's where it's like you can't just go on schedule alone.
Yeah, and if you're Gronkowski, Ingram, you're playing those guys. Tougher schedules. ASJ has a tougher schedule. He's probably the only one that you might be leaning on, counting on. But he's got Denver in the first week of the playoffs, so I'd still be playing him and just probably put him out there if he's on your roster and he's your starter. So Thursday night preview, the Seahawks. See, now we're talking Thursday night, just like I said.
We did it.
Yeah. The Seahawks 5-3 take on the Cardinals in Arizona 4-4. Jason's going to be there, and obviously Adrian Peterson's going to be amazing, according to me and me alone in this office. All right, 41.5 point over/under in this game. We've talked about Larry Fitzgerald a little bit. You know, I said the only player that I'm kind of thinking is a sneaky start at a pass catcher position is Jermaine Gresham if you're streaming a tight end this week. Adrian Peterson, I'm comfortable starting him as a running back. I'll just say 2. Do you guys?
That's fine.
You bet that he'd be a 1.
I bet that he'd be a 1. I'm more trying to make this global opinion here.
I'd start him as a 2. Sure.
Thomas Rawls, Doug Baldwin. Now, Doug Baldwin, you talked about it yesterday. He plays in the slot quite a bit. You don't think that Patrick Peterson's going to follow him around?
I do not. I mean, we had this week 1. It was sound the panic alarm because Patrick Peterson is going to shadow Golden Tate, even though that didn't jive with the history of Patrick Peterson's coverage. Lo and behold, Patrick Peterson shut down Marvin Jones because that's what he does.
Yeah, this is why I like Tyler Lockett, because Paul Richardson is still their main outside wide receiver.
What if Richardson
so
yeah, but I don't think he's going to play.
You don't think he'll play? I know he missed practice.
No, I don't think he'll play.
I'm just surprised.
I said that earlier.
Have you ever hurt your groin, Jay?
On a Tuesday when you have to play on Thursday? And he wasn't hurt in a game. He was hurt in practice. So that's my concern. So if, based on what you're saying, you like Lockett if Richardson plays.
Yes, correct.
You don't like Lockett at all if Richardson's out.
Not that I don't like him at all, but I definitely downgrade him. I mean, I would be hesitant to start him because of the worry of Patrick Peterson.
I do have, and this, I'm trying to remember if this was Patrick Peterson's down year, year 2 or whatever that was, when he was dealing with the health problems.
Diabetes.
Yes, he was dealing with the diabetes, and I have this image of him pulling Tyler Lockett's jersey because Lockett had absolutely scorched him. Now that's why I don't recall if that's during the health problem year or not, but Lockett has beaten Patrick Peterson in the past.
Okay. Any other points in this game?
Okay.
Thomas Rawls, like we said, he's just a desperation start if you have to.
Pay attention to Jimmy Graham news. We'll fill you in the next couple days. He didn't practice Monday or Tuesday. Likely just Veterans Day off.
Right. And is there any chance you play Luke Wilson if Jimmy Graham is out?
No, not
okay.
I don't think so.
Teddy Bridgewater has been activated.
Yeah, he's on the roster now.
Very nice.
All right. That is it for today's episode. Thanks for tuning in. We'll get into the matchup starts of the week tomorrow. It's going to be a fun week, guys. Did that show?
That was the best show today.
Wasn't it?
We did it.
Told you. Draft.com/ballers. Come play with us.
Goodbye.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Fantasy Footballers Podcast. Join our fantasy football community on jointhefoot.com and follow us on Twitter @TheFFBallers.